training an athlete or trying to rehabilitate them back into the game, it's all really the same stuff, just falling on different ends of the spectrum. It's really about getting that person 1% better each and every single day. Instead of just telling and asking, one of my mantras is taking out the control and leading with more curiosity. That's really the key to this, because the curiosity is then going to allow me to get into their brain and to realize and also discover how they think, how their brain works, what is their feeling and their perception around pain, what other dynamics and influences are potentially going into this. And then the athlete will tell you how to fix them. They'll give you all the information. And then it's really just our job as coaches, as PTs, to facilitate that trust and that confidence in their own bodies to get back into the game.
Welcome to the Captains and Coaches Podcast. We explore the art and science of leadership through the lens of athletics and beyond. I'm your host, Tex McCulkin, and today we're going deep with Dr. Matt Zanis, physical therapist, coach, and performance specialist who's worked with Olympic athletes, tip-of-the-spear operators, and athletes of all ages and experiences. In this episode, we'll explore the biopsychosocial model of injury and recovery, going beyond just the physical aspects to understand how psychology and social factors impact healing. Whether you're a coach working with young athletes or someone who's recovering from injury yourself, Zanis brings incredible insights on building trust, establishing healthy boundaries, and creating the right environment for both performance and recovery. With that, we'll pass it off to Dr. Zanis to help us raise the game. Ready, and ready. Action. Matt Zanis, live on location. Welcome to my town.
It's so great to be here, buddy. It's been a long time.
I know. Probably a tactical conference here or there.
Yeah.
Which you will be speaking at the 2025 NSCA Tactical Conference.
Had to take a breather last year. Just had to go do a little thing called the Olympics, but then we came back, and now we're ready to rock again.
Yes, we are. Speaking of ready to rock, I have a lot of fun topics, and these are centered around conversations that I have with parents. So as a coach, I have some authority, but then there's certain questions and dynamics and aspects of a whole season which I understand I am not qualified to answer certain questions. And then there's also a balance where there's questions I am qualified for, and then they find that they just choose not to believe the answers and guidance I give. So a lot to go on here, and I want to start helping our listeners understand something I've really had value with and learned from you is the biopsychosocial model and what this represents. It's not just the biology of how I would think of things when writing a strength and conditioning program. It's also the psychology and then the social environment that comes into play. So what is our perspective from understanding that is take us into it to help a parent understand that about their athlete and a coach to understand it about not just the individual, this whole ecosystem that they're building, we call a team.
Yes. Well, with the biopsychosocial model, it comes down to the fact that we are treating the whole entire individual, not just the injury and not just the pain that they're experiencing, because there's way more to it than goes into it than just the physiological healing parameters that everybody as humans has to abide by. And these other factors, the psychological and the social, are going to play a much larger role in it. So the biology, the tissue, every single body part that we have, tendons, ligaments, muscle bellies, joint capsules, all that stuff, they all go through their own healing process. And that's pretty standardized across the board. And yes, you could be taking some chemical substances that help enhance that and whatnot, but generally speaking, they're all going to follow similar timelines. However, the psychological aspect and the social, so the way that our brain perceives the injury, how it affects our identity, and really our perception of threat and how it's impacting our life is really going to play a much larger role in it. And then the last piece of that is the social, which is going to be family, friends, other people who are now influencing your brain's perception of that threat. And that in its own right will impact that physiological piece of it, where actually you're going to see different chemical mediators impacted in the brain that are also going to inhibit the healing process or enhance it, depending on, once again, how the brain is perceiving what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel you and I were raised in an aspect where we were not allowed to get hurt, just in the aspect of we valued playing time. We valued practice a lot. We valued the teams that we were on. You were a baseball guy. I grew up playing football. So then we valued this so much, we didn't want to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then into my college lacrosse career, I broke my ankle my freshman year. So I missed 8 days before my first game. I missed an entire year. I was able to shirt and get the extra year for grad school. But that moment, the whole months, I was ripping
Mm-hmm.
myself apart, not being able to play. So then I did not miss one practice following that, despite of any aches, pain, joints,
Mm-hmm.
unfunctioning AC joint, which you can't play lacrosse without it, but you can play defense,
Yep.
and head's a great weapon. So
That explains a lot.
now it does explain a lot. It does explain a lot. It does explain. Kidding. So now in an aspect, and then I'm living it, working with the middle school and high school levels.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with Olympic level, so there's this gap again of okay, I'm almost looking for excuses not to practice. I'm looking for excuses to miss game. I'm not feeling 100% today. It's game day. I'm not gonna play. Where does that come into play? And talk about environments. Like help me understand so I don't freaking want to like shake a parent on the sideline for not letting their kid play.
Listen. I can say because I've seen this at the lower levels more than the professional and the Olympic
I
level.
hope so.
But listen, if we find somebody at the professional Olympic level, that would be a new case study to
That's the
look into.
basketball team. Kidding.
Basically, the NBA. It's basically the
Yeah.
NBA, which we can go into a whole conversation about the NIL and everything and how that's playing out right now. I don't know if you saw the kid from Tennessee.
I was actually in Knoxville on campus when all the news was breaking. So I was speaking with
Mm-hmm.
strength coaches and coaches within the university scheme that then getting their opinions on that. So it was a very awesome experience, and I'm just sitting on the sidelines literally during this whole thing go down.
It's crazy because Nick Saban even called it
Oh
of
yeah.
how it would play out, of how it's going to start impacting their decision making, and there's a whole entitlement piece to it as well. However, getting back to the how this like psychological component impacts it all, I think there's different personality types,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you see a little bit more in the younger levels because they're more influential at that standpoint. The brain's still molding, and these kids are still trying to figure out who the fuck that they are. Right. And we've been there before. I've gone through many different progressions in my own life of who I thought I was and my identity and everything. But I have seen it play out in the lower levels where kids would use pain and use injury to kind of get what they want from an identity standpoint. Because I'm on the team, I get to wear the jersey,
Oh yeah.
right? Which that might be the ulterior motive. Like, hey, I got my Letterman jacket. I'm in the cool kids club. That's all that matters to me. So I can use pain and injury and use that as a means to not have to do any of the hard stuff, but get all of the accolades and get all the positive stuff at
Mm-hmm.
the end of it. And so you'll see kids that will catastrophize, right? And so they'll make things seem worse than they actually are. And that is going to be coming down to like, okay, maybe mom and dad are having an influence on that. And we're like, you're really hurt right now, and that becomes like the overprotective helicopter type of a parent where they're going to start influencing the kids' perception of what is hurt versus what is pain,
Mm-hmm.
which is a totally different thing. And here's the crazy part though too, is that everybody's perception, everybody's feelings and emotions around pain are going to be extremely different, but they're all valid.
Uh-huh.
Right. And that's something that we have to really consider too, because I get somebody that used to come into my office and they're telling me that they're hurt. We have to have that conversation of like, what's the difference between sore? Do you just like work yourself really hard versus, actual tissue damage where there's legitimate pain there, but they may be describing it in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. And so we still have to validate those experiences, with the validate those emotions, but then try and it's an art form, like play with it to help them really build a confidence and trust in their body again, which that's really going to be the tough part. But then there are guys like you and me who we would do anything and everything possible to still stay in the game. Different personality type, also can be equally as detrimental though, because on the flip side of the coin, now we have somebody like type A, very hard nosed, put the blinders on, I'm going to work through anything and pain doesn't exist, pain don't hurt type of thing. And that could get in the way if there is actually some type of tissue damage going on. And now we're making things worse down the line.
Yes, and here I am, 39, AC joint, ankle.
Yep.
It's all coming back to me. But thank you for the Old Bull program. Check that out to target these. And but this is where the social environment
Mm-hmm.
really
Yeah.
comes into play for a coach now. Where I'm joking aside, like it is very important for coach to understand the relationship and dynamic that the parent has with the kid. So, and what is the parent relationship to the coach? So I aim to go out of my way to establish a relationship with the parent to then create the conversation and build the trust. Otherwise, if this bridge doesn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
now, okay, well, they're rocking the jersey on the sideline,
Mm-hmm.
more likely.
Well, then you're up the creek without a paddle too. So that's where it's a little bit different in the world that you're in versus the world that I'm in. Like I'm working with the athlete,
Mm-hmm.
and there's usually no other influence other than maybe the coach or spouse, kids type of a thing. But there's not that overprotective parent that's potentially getting involved either. But from your standpoint, you have to deal with building trust not only with the athlete, but then also with the parent and also with the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, like if you get into a situation like that, who are they going to go to? Who are they going to trust? And there's got to be some discernment there too. All right. So whose role is more apt to that specific question? Like return to play stuff. Are we talking to the PT? Is the PT talking to the strength coach? Is the strength coach talking to the coach? Are they all working together for the benefit of the athlete? Or is potentially mom and dad coming in and circumventing that because they think they know what's best for the kid?
Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention there's the ATC too.
I am a recovering ankle taper, so
Oh man.
yeah.
So then, regarding feet and ankles, any kid that comes to me with those, because we spent so much time
Mhm,
within the foot and ankle dynamic warm up preparation or targeted
mhm,
true eccentrics. So we spent a lot of time getting ahead of shin splints and tackling ankles throughout the season. So anytime a foot injury occurs or rolled ankle, then I prescribe the magic ice bucket. So that's 15 minutes in a 5 gallon Home Depot bucket of
mhm.
ice. And then you're going to elevate, like get into a dead bug position, feet against the wall for 15 minutes. And we're just going to do that until it stops hurting.
Yeah.
You're still going to practice, you're still going to play. So then that was, I relayed that to the kids. They relayed that to the ATC, and the ATC said ice was old school. Don't ice. It's like, all right, well, okay. So now I need to go into like the true eccentrics and really like manipulate and show them so they can feel it versus me just telling because it wasn't enough for me to just tell.
Yes, and I think that's where at least one of the mantras that I have placed into my own philosophy of training and rehabilitation, because training an athlete or trying to rehabilitate them back into the game, it's all really the same stuff, just falling on different ends of the spectrum. It's really about getting that person 1% better each and every single day. And what you just brought up there was, instead of just telling and asking, one of my mantras is taking out the control and leading with more curiosity. That's really the key to this, because the curiosity is then going to allow me to get into their brain
Mm-hmm.
and to realize and also discover how they think, how their brain works, what is their feeling and their perception around pain, what other dynamics and influences are potentially going into this. And then the athlete will tell you how to fix them. They'll give you all the information. And then it's really just our job as coaches, as PTs, to facilitate that trust and that confidence in their own bodies to get back into the game. Because if they don't trust themselves and we push them to get back too soon, they may be physiologically healed. Tissue may be ready to go, may be strong. But if the brain isn't there and the brain's not trusting the body, that leads to hesitation. What does
Mm-hmm.
hesitation lead to?
Well, a lot of different things.
Yes. And mainly being, the hesitation is going to impact the way the body's moving. It's going to impact coordination. It's going to impact motor control. It's going to impact proprioception and kinesthetic awareness. And now we're putting ourselves into a situation where we are almost bypassing a lot of these potential danger signals in the brain. And that's when injury occurs,
Mm-hmm.
because we're hesitating with the movement versus just allowing our body to reflexively move the way that it knows how to. Or trying, kind of like, think about like putting on the parking brake while trying to pull or press the accelerator at the same time. It's not going to lead to a good outcome.
No. Yeah, and you're gonna really hammer down that gas, you're going to treat trying to go.
Trying to go, but you're not going to be able to get anywhere.
That's right. Time out. Feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders, actual training getting squeezed out by life's demands? The Old Bull program on Train Heroic was built for warriors like you. I create targeted 6-week training cycles that systematically address knee, hip, back, and shoulder health, the foundations that keep you moving when others break. No wasted time, no unnecessary complexity, just intelligent programming that adapts to your schedule and your body's needs. Each cycle manipulates key lifts to maximize results even when time is scarce, because old bulls don't stop training. We just train wiser. Whether you're managing old injuries or preventing new ones, this program keeps you powerful despite life's limitations. Start your 7-day free trial on Train Heroic by clicking the link in the show notes. The Old Bull program, because the world needs your strength. And now, back to the show. Ready, and ready. Taking your perspective from the Olympics, and they have a whole world outside of them. So now how does the social media, the social context of this whole world that exists, not in front of us, but it still has influence on performance, influence on play. So speaking from that perspective of the whole world is watching, how does that affect performance, and how are you helping your athletes get ahead of that?
Well, talk about pressure. I think every year that goes by and how our technology shifts and changes and the different eyes and outlets that we have on an athlete at any one given time, it's just constantly adding more and more pressure. So how can we influence the athlete's ability to manage and handle that pressure? It really comes down to stress inoculation. Okay, so as coaches and as PTs in that space, we can inoculate them to stress. You think about how you would get a vaccine, put a little bit of a stressor into the body, so the body can remember it and come back to it later on. If it comes in contact with it, it can now mount the appropriate response. Same thing with managing stress at that high level. Where can we engineer some experiences that, and listen, you're never going to be able to replicate the experiences at the Olympic level. It's never, or professional. Like I think the NFL, Super Bowl, or even like Major League Baseball playoffs, World Series, you can't replicate that stuff. But we know that we have the controlled environment of a gym setting where we can stress the body, and we can teach it how to handle higher levels of stress in that moment. And I could speak even to the shooting stuff. Like we'll try and replicate everything we can. Like one of my good buddies, he's a 4-time Olympic skeet shooting athlete, Vincent Hancock here, and he's in Fort Worth, Texas. We would go out there and do crazy wild stuff to him leading up to the Olympics, meaning like trying to distract him. So people coming around like yelling, we have music blaring in the background, like tossing buckets of empty shells into the air to kind of distract his visual appeal. I would joke with him that I'd be out there in like the background doing naked cartwheels, but we didn't get to that point.
Well, it's like the passes and the gorilla. You know that test?
No.
Well, I'm going to show it to you.
Okay.
But if you Google passing test gorilla, people out there watch it, and I want you to count how many passes they do. And this is a fun psychological test.
Okay.
I'm not going to ruin it for you because it's fun the first time everybody does it.
Yeah, I'll go back there. I'll be a guinea pig for it. And so we would get him into these situations where we would try to increase the stress level on him. And the interesting part too is we hooked him up to heart rate monitors.
Oh.
And because I'm trying to quantify some of this stuff, because nobody's doing a lot of this stuff and nobody's collecting data inside the shooting world at all. And having spent the last almost decade of my career inside the shooting sports, like there's still a lot to be learned there. And so we hooked him up to a heart rate monitor, and what we came to find out is that he is shooting his finals at about 135, 140 beats per minute, which falls right along for his age range inside that zone 2 cardio piece. So he is performing at a very high level with the heart rate going super high.
Yeah.
Crazy part, you know what makes him so freaking good? He doesn't feel it. Why?
He's focused.
He's focused. He needs to learn how to manage that stress and manage that energy. And listen, this comes down to a lot of nonverbal stuff we talk about, communication and whatnot. He's out there and he is literally embodying and admitting this badass, you are not going to fuck with me type of energy. You can't beat me. And you see it. You can see him out there, chest puffed forward, shoulders back, like head up, hand on the hips. When he shoots his station, he doesn't look at anybody else. He looks back at the crowd. And it's like, I'm not even acknowledging that you're here. And he's not doing that necessarily intentionally. He's in the zone. He knows what works for him. But think about how that's perceived by the rest of the athletes. Big silverback gorilla is on
Right.
the range, right? And you can watch the demeanor and the body positions of all these other athletes. It's like shrunken shoulders, head down, walking slow, looking down at the ground, watching all the other athletes, looking at their targets. He doesn't give a shit. He's shooting his targets.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. But he's done that over time, and he's built himself up into that energy. You can't beat that type of energy. There's no way. And so then that's the psychological component of it. Then we look at the physiological. Okay, I know now as his strength coach, where can I build out his program to help him manage that stress level higher at that higher beats per minute with the zone 2 cardio. We put him into situations in the gym. We get the heart rate up. We make him perform. We're not putting him on Bosu balls. We're not making like the stress from that. We don't need to go down that path in this one, but we're not putting him into all these like weird situations. We're just getting him physiologically up there and then making him work hard and making him solve problems, movement
Mm-hmm.
problems. Okay. Because when I'm working with athletes too, it's really more so about, before I can plug them into a specific program, I actually have to plug into their nervous system first.
Mm-hmm.
I have to understand how they think. I have to understand how their body works. I have to understand how their nervous system is going to handle different stressors. And that's how we use that as kind of like the basis then to build out the program, progress it throughout the year, depending on his competition schedule.
I I like that. So you're searching to see how his nervous system responds, and then
Mm-hmm.
how I would frame that, especially to connect at the high school level, is I'm testing for the same thing, but it is on a respect to a team sport and team
Mm-hmm.
dynamic of how my decisions affect other people. So responsible decision making, and then one thing I'm really exploring is, instead of responsibility, one word, responsibility. So now breaking it into two words and then having components that then uh, can gauge a reflection to create self-awareness, create social awareness, and then my self-management of how and this is aiming to have athletes think this way, which is a challenge certainly. My decisions affect others around me, and I have step into self-leadership, which
Mm-hmm.
then has a ripple effect. So hopefully this individual then establishes self-leadership before they step into a captain role, and then you understand how the social concept of leadership works, especially on a team where, when the Saturday nights come around, you got to walk that fine line as a leader between like hang out with my team,
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, responsible decision making, etc. So I like how you're framing this as central nervous system. I can certainly add that as a component to bring physiology into this when I'm simply applying training stress and practice stress to see how their character comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how you're adding the physiological component. Certainly, I see a path and connection to what I'm aiming to put into practice.
Yeah, well, and we'll think about bridging the gap between those two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you the physiological stuff. I know how much training the athletes are doing out in the sport or on the range for the shooting athletes. I know then how much stress I am personally applying to their bodies as a coach. But then we also have to take into consideration, where are all the other life stressors happening too, right? Relationship stress, work stress, business stress, family stress. That's all going to impact their ability to perform. And school is a big one from your kids. And like, God knows what kids are thinking about themselves or what they're having to deal with all the social media stuff too. It's like we are we are in an age right now where there has I don't think there's ever been more of a comparisonitis type of a phenomenon going on.
No, and school goes home. Before it was like, oh, school ends at 3:30. Okay, now I can get away or I can go to
Mhm.
sports practice and then whatever. But now the social aspect or the bullying, it follows you home.
Well, and so think about too, though. You mentioned something about how you're in it's like self-development and leadership, and you yourself are evolving as a leader. A lot of like young men are also searching for those role models too. Who are they going to model their behavior after? Sometimes it is the father in the home. Sometimes there is a strong role model there too, but a lot of times too, at least from like when you and I grew up, I modeled a lot of it off of, yes, my father. He was a very, very impactful leader in my life, but then also my coaches,
Hmm.
big piece. And so they're building their confidence off of the way that they're perceiving you carry yourself too, which is just it's massive to think about, like the influence that you're having on these kids' lives. And then you brought up like, okay, are we going to hang out with the team? There's a friend component of that too. Or are we going to have to ride the line of uber professionalism? I think that just comes down to establishing boundaries and knowing when one is more appropriate than the other. I will say, just from my own success as a strength coach and as a PT at the highest level, one of my superpowers or strong suits is my ability to build connection
Hmm.
with the athlete.
That's why I want to have this conversation with you.
I
On
joke
right.
I joke about it all the time. Like I could be the worst PT out there. I really could. But I'm so good at developing a connection with the person in front of me that they build so much trust and confidence in me that they know that I can get them where they want to go. And
Hmm.
ultimately, what is the role of us as coaches? Our role is to help somebody get somewhere they can't take themselves,
That they want to go.
that they want to go. Not where we want to take them.
That be the counterpart.
Exactly. Not where we want to take them, but understanding how what they view as their life goals. What is their vision of where they want to go? And that's like our job as coaches is to ask the right questions to get into their world to understand how we can actually facilitate growth down
Hmm.
that path. But once again, control versus curiosity. We're not controlling them, taking them down the path we want them to go. We're staying curious and helping them to go down the path that they have and envision in their mind. And we're just a guide. We're just a facilitator. We're like the person that's coming with them to the fork in the road and helping them make decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, I, feel a lot of that. Uh, we're entering into we're going to come back to injury, but we're entering into team dynamics. So now, how I've envisioned the development of a coach. So you enter into this field, you're not giving a lot of responsibility. Now the singular word, you're not given a lot of responsibility, but you do have a lot of opportunity and downtime to connect with athletes
Mm-hmm.
on an individual level. Where the head coach he's leading the team, making sure everything's running on time with purpose, writing the vision, the program, practice plans, whatever it may be, and leading the games. As an individual starting out, now there's a lot of time between the whistles for you to establish an individual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And as you develop over your career, success based off your ability to connect and relate to individuals will then lead to your ability to lead a team. So now, uh, helping those younger coaches and leaders on the team, because
Mm-hmm.
senior, let me frame this. I'll finish the coach thought. So now, help young coaches understand how they can connect and relate to an athlete, because you're getting into this profession because you love team sports, you love football, or you love weightlifting. I'm going to turn my career into weightlifting. That doesn't always translate. In the same respect, I see the first year coach and then a team leader, a team captain on that same level, where you're stepping into this authority figure role for the first time, and you want to overstep sometimes. So you take too much control. And then what led you to be the senior captain, nobody else is acting that way, so you get mad at them. Little do you know, you too were that freshman, sophomore making those poor decisions as well. So I see those two guys on the same level as entry level leadership, from both a team captain stepping into authority, and then now my first year as a coach with the opportunity between the whistles to make an individual connection.
Mm-hmm. Read the room, bro. Right? Like we get put into these different environments, and I think a lot of times ego can get into the way. You know, we've gone through the trials and tribulations to get where we got to. And it doesn't matter if you have got yourself to the point where you're a position now at a high school level, or you're college coach level, or maybe you're into professional sports. Now you're getting into even the highest, like tip of the spear type of athletics. ego can get in the way at every single step.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an awareness piece that has to come in of, is this serving me right now? Right? Am I in a position where my confidence is going to help facilitate change? My confidence is going to help get this athlete to where they need to go. My confidence is going to be the thing that bonds this team together, or is it going to be coming off as cockiness? And there's a fine line there too. And you know what, I think athletes and coaches really do perceive that without even having to say anything about it. It's an energy piece. It's an energy piece. And so for me, through my career, and listen, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way too, where I think that I know what's best for the athlete. I think I know what's best for the organization. And here's where I make the mistake and where I can hopefully help other coaches not make the same mistake is I would get into a situation where I do think I know what's best, and I would make decisions or take action on something without considering really considering other people's feelings about it, considering other people's opinions about it, even if I didn't think that they were right or wrong, because that's the ego piece that's getting involved there. And I would just go ahead and go down that path without considering anybody else's opinions or feelings. And when you don't take other people's emotions and everything into consideration, there is people get their feelings hurt by that, and then you are then perceived as taking control of a situation. You are perceived as knowing all, and there's not a collaborative effect there. When there's no collaboration, that's where heads start to butt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even if you might be in the right, you still need to be able to have the wherewithal to once again stay curious and ask questions. Hey, I think that I think this is the right program for these athletes, or I think I want to do this with them. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that, like, what's your input? Is this where we should go, or do you have any other opinions on it? And so it's just that collaboration piece where people are allowed to have their own say in it that helps the whole team feel cohesive
Mm-hmm.
versus one person trying to direct the ship.
Mm-hmm. And then within the man, I really enjoy that entry level leader student athlete. So now getting them even to ask those
Mm-hmm.
questions. What would be like an entry level for an level leader to start to open up the door to their team? What do you feel it is like walkout music, like pregame music versus like, hey, this is our soundtrack. What are some entry level leadership tips to start to say like build trust, like outside of crossing the
Mm-hmm.
responsible decision making line?
Yeah. Shift the energy, right?
Shift the energy.
Shift the energy. Because I always go into this, and we've used this line before, having that white belt mentality. Okay. Walk into a room like I don't know nothing. Okay. And then that kind of puts you all at the same level playing field. But if you bring up the walkout music or whatever, like if you're in the gym, maybe each athlete then has a say on a particular day, inclusivity on it, right? Or maybe they're going to pick it for the week, or you take a vote. Do we want some rock today? Do we want some country today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's just, once again, it's just helping them stay involved in the decision making process. That's really the key to all this.
I like it.
Yeah.
The Okay, so now graduating into more team dynamics, like how do you keep that low ego without being like a pushover? Because kids will test boundaries. So now, yes, my
Not
blood,
not
my
just kids,
yes,
not just kids.
uh,
Grown ass adults will test the boundaries all the time.
athletes will test boundaries. So
Mm-hmm.
now, how do
Mm-hmm.
you prevent your resting heart rate from going up to 135 when they start to test boundaries? And then now it's okay, I want to be collaborative here, but now you're just being difficult.
I think that there is a time and a place for holding accountability.
Okay. So that now we're framing accountability. I like it.
Yeah. So I think that this all starts from the foundational level of taking the leadership role and taking responsibility as the leader to establish the boundaries and what they look like first.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, listen, like our whole role, I think, as coaches, or even like even in the relationship sphere, whether it be romantically or at friendships or whatnot, and being in a more masculine role is to provide the structure. And undoubtedly, like we can relate this back to strength and conditioning too. When we're putting together a program, we are providing that athlete structure. When we provide the structure, we produce a container for all of those different athletic attributes and characteristics to flourish and develop.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no structure, we're basically just like throwing it against a wall and seeing what sticks. And then the athlete, you'll know. And listen, I've been down this path before too, where I'm in a coaching container with an athlete and we're working through the program. And then all of a sudden their level of involvement and curiosity and asking questions and popping into our WhatsApp feed or leaving feedback or comments inside the Train Heroic app or something, it starts to diminish. And that's like a huge red flag for me. I'm like, oh, their involvement is going down. That means they're not invested. They're not still bought in. They're maybe not as confident where the program is going. How can I intervene and provide them a little bit more reassurance, a little more structure and confidence in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because otherwise they're going to try and pivot. Like we all have the attention span of goldfish when it comes to this stuff, right? If we don't see the progression, we don't see the outcome.
Yes, and their passion is the sport, is not the
It's
performance.
not the performance.
Where we're yes, details, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Just a warm up. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't need that.
So it'll go to the wayside.
I'm a supple leopard. I don't need that.
Level 99, supple leopard. I have now ascended to that throne.
I'm not. I'm an old ball.
I can't do the splits anymore though. I let that skill go. So I guess I'm not really as supple anymore as I once thought.
Hey, that's a box to tick.
That's when I tore a piriformis muscle, and so yeah, we steer away. But I did check the box. We got there once.
I'm just
hips super supple. They're supple for other things too. But anyway, so you provide the structure in the training program. And then you also, in a relationship, need to provide the structure where the relationship's going.
Okay, structure or container, like
both.
Boundaries.
They're the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the container as being built by the structure of boundaries. It's so funny because people are like very, very hesitant to put up a boundary because I think of like the emotional side effects that can occur of like, am I gonna hurt their feelings? Or is my boundary going to be crossed and then my feelings get hurt? Or am I an asshole for setting up this boundary? But at the end of the day, the boundaries create safety.
I'll double down on that.
Yeah.
So from a coaching perspective, we can be friendly, but we're not friends.
Correct.
So the boundaries are very beneficial, especially for the younger the younger athletes who are learning about boundaries through athletics. Timeout. Text here at Train Heroic headquarters, meeting with the team to talk about the coaching experience that I'm able to provide for my athletes. So if you're a coach and want to put your program out there on an app that athletes actually enjoy using, Train Heroic's for you. I've been using it since 2014, delivering literally over tens of thousands of workouts to athletes, and the Train Heroic allows me to provide the unique coaching experience that I want to. Uploading video, providing coaching feedback, directions, and building a community. That's why I love Train Heroic. And if you want to take your athletes where they can't take themselves, that they want to go, head to trainheroic.com/captains and check out how you can deliver programming to them. And now, back to the show. Ready, and rip. Excellent point. Continue on with this perspective of boundaries and containers, and then as I mentioned self-leadership before, which is very important for coaches. Coaches often give so much, right? Servant leadership, I'm going to give, that they also neglect. So how can these same ideas, concepts, principles of establishing boundaries, containers, and relationships with our athletes help us off the field?
Well, the boundaries are going to be healthy regardless of the relationship you're in, whether it's a coach-athlete relationship, coach-coach relationship, friendships, romantic relationships. It's really all the same thing. It provides safety. And what we spoke about before was how there's this weird perception that if I put up a boundary, people are going to be offended or like and I think there's a big fear there too that like, oh shit, how am I going to react if that boundary gets crossed?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it sets up an agreement, and those agreements create safety. And so when you brought up the point about what if they start pushing the boundaries? Well, now we have an agreement in place and like, no, this is where we can now hold them accountable. and come back to like, hey, we agreed upon this. Are we going to honor that? Yes or no? And that's where you can't push back because you have backing, you have a foundation to do that with. Conversely, if you don't have the boundaries set up in place, and now some type of argument ensues, a rift happens, or the resistance comes in, what do you have to go back to? It's like, oh shit, like I guess we didn't really establish what was going to be right or wrong here. And so now you get left with this like up to open interpretation on both sides, and we both know how that goes, right? So now we have to go into like, okay, now we got to have a conversation, we got to hear each person's side, and then ultimately, hopefully, the solution we come up with is to set a boundary out of that conversation. But let's be leaders, let's get out ahead of it in the beginning and set the boundaries. It's the same thing in relationships too. I mean, in the relationships that I've been in, we've always set up agreements. Like, what do we stand for as a couple, right? What are going to be our guideposts? It's the same thing in the coaching world as well. And so inevitably, like there is no perfect relationship. We all know this. Inevitably, we're going to get into some type of a disagreement, some type of an argument where we're going to, we're human. We make mistakes, right? But now, okay, we can always come back to that guidepost of, a great example here is in our relationship, we are always going to be a team. It's us against the problem, not like make each other the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we always have that in the back of our mind, now we have that to come back to. It's like, okay, or maybe we're kind of mad at the other person. Maybe we have a disagreement of like what they did or what they said, but what's the problem? Reorient ourselves. And now we can start attack the problem together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Same thing with like the coaching dynamic as well. If we have an agreement set up ahead of time and there's some type of resistance of like, maybe let's bring an injury here. And this is a great example. Return to play. This could be a conversation set up ahead of time with the coaching staff of when an athlete gets hurt, what are our guidelines here? Whose authority takes precedence?
Mm-hmm.
And you can establish that from the get-go. I've done that with my coaches within the USA Shooting and all these other organizations is like, somebody gets hurt. I know the parameters of how this is going to take place. Do you trust me to help them get back to where they need to go in a timely manner and know that's in the best interest of the athlete and the team? Okay. And then we come up to that agreement together versus the same thing like with a coach. The coach is going to establish a guideline and a rule with who they're choosing to be on the team and in what capacity, and then the playbook and the X's and O's and whatnot. And like we trust them to take care of that. That's their role. But we can come up with those agreements ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we don't run into a situation where maybe head coaches coming in and be like, I need him to get back on the field like today. But it's like, no, we agreed this. He's like at week 8. He's not really gonna be ready until like week 12. Let's honor that.
Or else.
Or now we're risking potential re-injury and whatnot.
Or worse.
It's
all connected.
It's all connected. Yep, absolutely.
Which I do want to cover and get your insight on, is we speak often about identity. We identify as athletes. My career ends. What next? But within my athletic career, there's also an identity of injury prone. So now, if a kid just identifies as injury prone or gets into the mindset of like, I'm broken, this always happens to me. So now maybe they don't say to themselves, injury prone, but they have this mindset of, I'm bad luck. I always get hurt. Always this, always that. So how can we help them establish and break this cycle that, I would refer to it, there's a movement problem here. That maybe you're healing X this, but we're still moving poorly that is causing X, Y, Z to happen. How would you approach this with an athlete who's just, they're labeled as an injury prone kid?
Take him out the pasture. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
No, listen, I was, and I'll speak from my own personal experience here. I was that injury prone kid.
A malingerer?
Well,
you were a training room guy? I've got
I,
lots of
I was in the
rips
training room
out of
because I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. I just wanted to learn.
to learn.
Yeah, I
Okay,
wanted to
okay.
learn. I just, I joke all the time that I was kind of a genetic trash can as a kid
Oh, I get it.
growing up. And so, yes, I would practice, practice, practice. I would train more in the gym when I always just seemed to get hurt. Um, However, there's always, like you brought up, there is an underlying reason why. And when I talk about this with athletes, it turns into this like vicious cycle component, right? Because our mindset of it is going to be limiting us the most.
Hmm.
And so I don't believe that there's actually any injury prone kids out there or any injury prone athletes. There's just, I think, poor management of the motor system itself. Or they're following a really unintelligently designed program and it's not really addressing the root causes of things. And so you run into this vicious cycle. And we see this in PT world all the time where we're really great at taking away pain, but we're not great at like fixing the solution or fixing the root cause of the problem and finding a solution. And so we get athletes to feel better, but they're not necessarily changing their movement. And so we kind of run into the same issue later on down the road, where once again, we may improve the tissue's tolerance to stress and load, but then we exceed that again later on down the road.
Hmm.
And so it's like this waveform of trough and valleys. And so what really ends up happening is it all comes down to trauma. Athletes are going to experience, well, as humans, we're all going to experience trauma one way or another. Physical trauma, like an injury, but then there's also the psychological, emotional, spiritual, sexual trauma. It's all going to dump stress into the same bucket. And the brain perceives it the same way.
Hmm.
It can't distinguish between all of it. And this is where you lead into psychological dysfunction that we would then label as like something like PTSD, or dysfunction from a movement perspective, limping, altered movement patterns, dysregulation, that type of stuff, right? So think about an ankle sprain.
Okay,
You've experienced many of those. Weak ankles.
easy.
Yeah. Well, we're fixing that, right?
Just
Uh,
big calves, dainty ankles.
you're
It's
barefoot
perspective.
training now. You look great in heels, though. Uh,
Boots. They're called boots.
they're enclosed heels. So the trauma happens. We see dysfunction. From a physiological perspective, with maybe an ankle sprain, let's say you sprain your right ankle, what are you going to do? You're going to take weight off of it temporarily. You're going to limp on the left side.
Hmm.
That's normal. That's a normal dysfunctional pattern to experience. However, what happens if you don't learn to trust the ankle again?
Stay on the left.
You stay on the left, right? Or, coming back to what we just talked about, maybe you go through a rehab process where we do all the icing, we do all the stim, we make sure that the ankle feels better. We may even improve a little bit of tissue tolerance with some banded exercises or whatnot to the muscle, but then we never change the way that the foot and ankle is actually transmitting ground reaction forces. And so ankle feels better, but the compensation patterns still abide. Okay.
Hmm.
And so now we run into a situation where we had trauma, we experience some type of dysfunction, which should be temporary. The dysfunction then leads into compensation patterns, which are now permanent. And the crazy part here is that these compensation patterns may be conscious. You may know about them, you may be aware of them, but they a lot of times become subconscious.
Hmm.
And this is where people end up seeing me, is because I have to help unravel those unconscious compensation patterns that they're just not aware are happening. And we just have to bring them to the surface level, and that's when we can start addressing them.
Hmm.
If those compensation patterns are not addressed, and listen, I don't want people to believe that compensations are bad. Elite athletes are the best compensators out there.
Hmm.
Okay. However, those compensation patterns are going to lead into accelerated tissue stress to the same structures over and over and over again, one way or another. That accelerated tissue stress is then going to lead into one of two outcomes. Outcome number one is create enough stress to develop pathological tissue damage, meaning you hurt yourself. You blow a tendon, you tear a muscle. Or, and quite honestly, that one happens more so in men because we have egos a lot and we will put our head through a wall despite our body. We see it with our high level operators in the military all the time. Makes my job very, very stressful and frustrating.
But
Anyway,
it keeps you
but
going.
it does keep me going because they're a fun group to work with. Or outcome number two is we create new compensation patterns to offset the old ones. And so we see this more so in women primarily because women are, generally speaking, way more in tune with their bodies, and they're smarter than us men. It's true. It's true.
I concur.
Yeah. But point being is that we keep going around and around and around this vicious cycle because we never address the original
Yeah.
trauma. How do we get down to that, back down to the original trauma? What we talked about in the very beginning here is curiosity, questions, because they may be putting themselves into situations, movement patterns that are triggering something in their brain as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the major issue.
One question to continue with the curiosity. The trauma is a matter if it's contact or non-contact.
Does not matter.
So how I see that contact, then my reaction, I shy away from that, or I change how I play to avoid more trauma. And then non-contact, I would just anticipate like a fear to get back at all.
Fear to get back at all, but then also that's the trickier one because when you have some type of non-contact injury, you are damaging the proprioceptors inside the tissue of whatever joint is involved. And so what ends up happening now is we have, at a psychological level, your brain isn't receiving the same amount of information or same kind of information that it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the fear and the hesitancy develops on a subconscious level. You don't trust that ankle again.
Or it's a new ACL. It's somebody else's ACL.
Maybe. It may be somebody else's ACL, but maybe they got better genetics than you do. And so it could work out for the better. We can rebuild him.
But we don't want to spend a lot of money.
And now you can become RoboCop. But point being is that when you damage those joint receptors or the tissue receptors, the brain doesn't have a very clear image of what that joint and that body part is doing in space.
Mm-hmm.
This is a concept called Fitt's Law. And so
spelling?
FITTS, which states that there's a discrepancy between speed and accuracy of movement.
Oh.
Okay. And so our brain has an image of every movement pattern that we do. When we get hurt, 9 times out of 10, it's because we're moving at speed close to or near our end ranges of motion. And when the closer we are to our end ranges of motion, the less accurate a perception of our brain.
For non-contact.
Correct. That has of it. So think of like, a great example is going back to the ACL. Think about somebody cutting on the football field, trying to change direction. Knee comes on the inside of the toe box, which it should be able to do. However, maybe it hasn't been there before. It's not used to going that range of motion. And at that high level of speed, brain can't perceive where it's at, can't control it. And so something tears. Okay. So this then leads into, well, how do we improve that accuracy? How do we improve the brain's image of the body part? And this is going to come down to how we help athletes get into these different positions. Mm-hmm. And I can't, I'm getting a little bit of a soapbox here because it's crazy. Like with the ACLs, we are actually no better at reducing the injury rate, incidence of them, prevalence of them than we were like 30 years ago. We're terrible at it. And there's a lot of factors that I think go into that. I can speak from the rehabilitation side of things. I don't think that we are putting these athletes or giving them the opportunities to get in these positions that they're going to experience on the field because of whatever research has told us is the correct way to train it, or, okay, because the knee goes into valgus, comes on the inside of the knee, we can't ever go there again. Mm-hmm. Well, how are we going to prevent that? Like, I will tell you this, I had people walk on the inside of their ankles with the knee coming in and load it that way. Mm-hmm. Walking on it, low level stress, then we progressively overload that over time. But because now I'm giving them an opportunity to experience it. So if we go back to Fitt's Law, the way that we help an athlete develop a clearer picture in the brain is to slow things down. So our passive flexibility, our passive range of motion is always going to dictate our active dynamic, because whatever flexibility reserve that we have is going to dictate how fast we can move into it. And so, yeah, it makes sense if our hip doesn't have enough internal rotation in the femur and we go into a position where we need it, like in cutting and changing direction. Now we're experiencing a tear because we don't know how to get in there. So how can we create more internal rotation? We slow things down, time under tension, take advantage of the viscoelastic properties of the tissues, Okay, give the body an opportunity to feel into the load, into that range of motion, into that stress. It's way more comfortable that way. And
Mm-hmm.
it can start to develop a clearer picture of what that range of motion is supposed to be like. Now we can strength train in there. Now we can progressively overload it. And now we can put them back into an environment where they're going to be able to express it dynamically.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key to working past a lot of these injuries. And that is always going to be involved in that return to play criteria as well.
I love it. Yeah, the manipulation of foot position, all these different things do work into my old bull program for us seasoned veterans to find those things and then aim to breathe into them under load. It was one of the big things I learned from you is how we can really stress and improve tissue health is through load.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the injured kids that I'm working with, Achilles, a partial tear ACL, then it's introducing these things. And then I used to be such a perfectionist within the movement realm, but now allowing them to step into a valgus navicular drop.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's cool is the different, and also stole this from you, just manipulating the different foot positions with wedges,
Mm-hmm.
just to get them in there, and then bringing awareness to their breath in these positions. I'm not telling them it's wrong or right. If we have a barbell on their back for the younger guys, then I still switch into perfectionist. But when we're just moving and adding free weight load to all these different things, and I still continue to learn getting these younger guys, because I mean they're at the base of puberty,
Mm-hmm.
so they still got 4 years to grow into themselves, but still experience these injuries.
Yeah.
So yeah, always learning. But then I like how we're framing this. Yeah, the passive range of motion helps dictate the active dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. You keep speaking about like these younger kids. Ultimately, and they need to develop a base level of strength first.
Yes.
Okay, exactly, that's going to develop the mental fortitude and the robustness there as well, and breed confidence into everything else that they do. Once they have a base level of strength, we can still help them improve their movement capacity, movement robustness, mobility, which is really just movement options, by just having them explore different ranges of motion. What do kids like to do? They're freaking competitive if they're playing a sport, hopefully, at least a little bit. Some, maybe.
It's
But
a
then
bullet point we'll get to here.
also they like to play, right? So, and that's just getting creative as a coach and helping them get into these different ranges of motion. It's all about the way that you frame it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can put them into those weird postures, those weird positions as part of warm-ups, as part of cool downs. And that's at least giving them, at least at that young age, an ability to have exposure to it and start to developing stress in there while they're doing the meat and potatoes of the program and developing that robust level of strength. And, it's one of those things too, where I think a lot of people dictate the success of a strength conditioning program by failure, like moving towards failure, or we are using strength metrics as the goal. And this is coming from somebody who was told as a high school lineman they need to squat 315 out of 180 pounds to start in the defensive line of my high school football team. I was fast as shit, super agile. That was my strength. That wasn't serving me, but I had to hit the number. So I looked like a dog shitting razor blades just to, to get it up.
Oh, I've seen you squat.
Talk about like
Then rewind it 15 years. Yikes.
yeah, it was absolutely terrible. And so I think we're using some of those wrong metrics there. And this is where like my personal belief is like we talk about strength and conditioning, but it really should be the movement strength and conditioning field. And that that's very, very intentional. It should come first before the strength and conditioning. Let's help these athletes move well.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I dictate success of a program is through succeeding, right? Because we are progressively overloading them. Progress, right? Progressively overloading them. It's just that 1% better everyday piece. And because ultimately, we come back to the nervous system stuff that we were talking about earlier. The nervous system will shut you down. And there's a discrepancy here. Like we know that like the cardiovascular system is always going to develop faster than the body will, than the body can adapt. So this is where you get people that can do something from a cardio output so much better, and then their body starts breaking down over time, right? Because they can push themselves past their limits. Same thing when it comes to training and everything and returning to play from injury. The body has its own tricks. Obviously, the body is always going to try to adapt. That comes back to the whole entire like adapt or die response, but it can only last for so long. And eventually you reach a point where the nervous system has had enough and it will shut you down. One way or another. It'll start to limit output. It'll start to make you feel more immobile. It'll tighten you up. But here, what's human nature? What do we think? What do you think we do in that moment? We freaking
Push.
double down.
Right.
We push it
I'm not working hard enough.
hard enough. And so now we get into a situation where we are adding more volume, and then maybe we're adding more intensity to the volume. And we can't figure out why we keep getting hurt, coming back around to our injury proneness, right? We're doing all the things right. We're working hard in the gym, but maybe we're not moving effectively or efficiently. Okay. And those neural inputs that we're now receiving, our body's super smart. It's trying to shut us down for a reason. Because it can't keep up with it. All right, so what do we do at that point? You gotta change the input up. You gotta change the way the body is actually experiencing that load, the way that it's experiencing that stress. And we change that by giving the body more options to work with.
I like it.
That's the key.
So, how have you communicated that to the type AA Olympian?
Well,
everything they did got them there. They are right until they're not.
Yeah, and I'm gonna explain this with a story.
Please.
Okay. So when I got into the shooting sports, they were not perceived as athletes by even the Olympic Committee. Okay. So they never received like the same level of care and attention and everything like that. And so I knew that I could make a change there. And shooting is very much a technical based sport, right? A lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of accuracy.
Margin for error
is very, very small. We're talking like in the world of skeet shooting with the targets moving crossing patterns, you have to get both of them under 1.7 seconds. There's not a lot of room there at all so the more that we can make their movement patterns efficient, the more accurate they're going to be. In the shooting world though, and tying this back into like this progressive overload piece, their only means of getting better was shooting more. More volume, more lead down range. From a shotgun standpoint, more blast to the shoulder. And they'll keep going till they hit a plateau. Okay. What did they do when they hit the plateau?
Get frustrated, want more.
Or they would reach a certain level of success and couldn't get any better.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
their genetic potential.
Or podium potential is now either going to stall out, or when they were once great, now they can't replicate. And so when I got into the shooting sports and I met Vinny, who's our now 4-time gold medalist in skeet, say he's a pretty successful athlete. Okay. He was at a point in his career where he'd already been to 4 Olympics. Okay. So he did Beijing in 8, London in 2012, golds in both of those. Did not perform as well in 2016 due to a myriad of external influences, got in his own head, right? And so I met him in 2017. In that moment, he was at a very pivotal point in his career where shoulder hurt, back hurt. He was in the military before, body was breaking down. And we reached a point now where he's coming off a loss.
Oh, yeah.
So trying to rebuild that, and he's got the mental fortitude to it. However, we got him to the point where we used, bear with me here, I used my hands-on skills to help his shoulder and help his back feel better. What ended up happening is nobody had ever been able to essentially use their hands to get into the point where he felt that good. And so there was like that first little piece of buy-in. The second piece was going into education. And this is, I think this is across the board. Whenever the brain has more education and understanding about something, the pain signals decrease because it can conceptualize it. There's not as much of a fear or threat response in there. And so I started having him do just little body weight movements, and he started to notice changes. Another piece of buy-in, more education. Okay, now we got to move into more of the strength and conditioning, because most of these shooting athletes weren't training at all or doing anything. It's a beer league type of sport where they can, and some of these athletes do actually still think they shoot better hungover, which, to each his own. But anyway, you could get away with it. Not saying that's performance enhancing by any means. However, education came in the strength and conditioning piece, and he started to see his capacity improve. So now he found that he can go out to the range and he could do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need to shoot 400 rounds. Listen, I've been around athletes, and this is the old Italian model, where they were having these guys, girls shooting 500 rounds a day. When I say rounds, shotgun, like blasts. There's a round of 25 targets, but shooting, let's say 500 shells a day, to the point where their shoulders were bleeding, just because of improving capacity. That by that means, but there's no quality there. It wasn't actually making them any better. And then the old school model, as far as exercise is concerned, is like go for a run. And so, sure, are you getting some cardiovascular? Yeah, cardio benefits. Awesome. But people take that for granted, where running is actually a very complex activity, and there's a lot of impact load, like 8 to 10 times your body weight through the body. And so what ended up happening is they're just developing way more stress, too much stress, too much stress, too much stress. And so we go back to Vinny's case. Now you could do more with less, because his body had more capacity, because we were building it in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
His joints, muscles, ligaments, tendons are all getting stronger. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it's like a stepwise process. It's like, let me establish this buy-in by making me feel a little bit better, but then let's layer that in with education. Baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to say, we got to go do some like Turkish get-ups, we're going to do all these end range extension holds for the shoulder, he would have been gone. There's no way, because it would have been too much too soon.
Right.
It may have been the right thing to do, but it wasn't going to establish a long-term connection and buy-in with him. And so it was these little baby steps along the way that developed more trust, more confidence, more trust, more confidence. And we got to the point where, and this is what we're talking 5, 6, 8 years now at this point, where he went from a little bit of hands-on work, a little bit of body weight stuff away from shooting, to the point where he transitioned to some body weight stuff and warm-ups with shooting, to the point then where he transitioned into some weight training away from shooting, still got the body stuff around shooting, body weight stuff. Then we transitioned into, okay, now we are weight training in coordination with our shooting practices, but not around competition. And then we went into, okay, now we can do some weight training leading up to competition. And then we went into, okay, now his body freaking craves it. Mm-hmm. And now he's weight training all the way through it. Now, is it programmed in a way where we're managing the stress load for it and we're periodizing it for competition? Absolutely. However, it was those little steps along the way over an 8-year time span that got him to where he wanted to go. And now we developed such a great friendship over it, where we talked about boundaries earlier. We have boundaries that are established, when we're in competition mode and whatnot like that, but we can go out and have a beer on the weekend, and it's totally cool because we agreed upon that. But it was those little small steps along the way that led into this big overarching compounding success with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come back to answering the question, it's really not about what you say, but how you're delivering it and what you're doing from an action standpoint along the way, of being mindful with the level of input that you're giving them at any one point in time. Because I could have let my ego get in the way there. I could have let the cockiness get in the way. Sure, I know what I'm doing. You didn't experience this before. I know this is going to be good for you. But that would have turned him off.
Mm-hmm. And then it would have been his fault for not listening to you.
Exactly. Which is a trap that I think a lot of coaches that we all fall into.
And how do you know when someone's really ready to return to full speed?
Well, we can look at metrics. Okay, so there is, once again, if we keep bringing this back to the biopsychosocial piece, there are, different strength curve ratios we can look at for an ACL, like quad and hamstring. It's all useful. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's different tests and measures that we can do from an agility standpoint, hops and skips and their ability to handle load. We can look at strength components in different lifts. Absolutely. That all plays a role into this too. But then once again, confidence. How do we know that they are ready to return to play from a confidence standpoint? how do we even test that? That's the kicker, right? And so I know physiologically that they're going to be at the right point in time to return to play based off of those set standard physiological healing parameters. We know that we can accelerate that a little bit too with some chemical enhancements that are also safe. Nutritionally, they're on point with it all. But then we could also look at different measures from a psychological standpoint, the Tampa Kinesiophobia Scale. There's different questionnaires you can give them that will give you an idea of how confident they are in their body moving forward. But then the old tried and true conversation. You know that you can talk to somebody and you can gauge whether or not that they are at a place where they can return to play, and you can see it on their face typically. And then that's where it comes down to a conversation of like, once again, questions, curiosity, like how ready do we think we are? What is your confidence level? Give me a percentage of being able to get back out onto the field. Okay. All these factors need to be brought into consideration for that, because that's going to give you then the whole entire picture. Otherwise, like we could say, hey, you're testing out all these physiological measures, but I don't know if we're ready yet.
Yeah. And then athletes will lie to you.
Yes.
So establishing the deeper you have within that relationship, you can tell if they truly are feeling that way. If they truly are confident versus just, oh, I want it so bad. And then tragedy potential could strike.
And I think that that's, the depth of relationship that you have with that person, the more apt they're going to be to disclose that type of information to you, especially if they trust you. If they don't, that's where you're going to see the lies come out.
Yeah, even if they're lying to themselves, they still trust you, and you'll be able to read it well. I mean, your approach to thinking about injury recovery and including the human experience is not normal for a DPT. That's why we're friends. So, I mean, take us back quick to that, like your entry level leadership moment in physical therapy when you realized that there was more to the test, more to when what you should have thought worked but didn't.
Well, I'm not your standard PT. I'm also not your standard thinker either. And I say that because there's always been something about me that never wanted to conform and always wanted to go against the grain. And for better or worse, it has led me to where I'm at right now, because I don't think that I not necessarily harnessed it well in the beginning stages, because where I'm curious now was just kind of downright disrespectful probably early on in the way that I questioned things. And it was rude, but we developed and we've improved that over time. Okay. But it's my ability to question the standards and question the norms that has really allowed me to develop into this philosophy that I have now, my ability to connect with the athletes. Because I started my career for the first couple of years working in a big box physical therapy clinic, seeing 4 people an hour. And like the burnout of that is just ridiculous, right? For me personally, like I got to the point where it's like, end of the day, and I haven't taken a breath all day, and it's like you're dealing with everybody's emotions. And it ultimately came down to the point where, and I vividly remember this too, where in those scenarios, in those environments, the hands-on skills of the PT are preferred and prioritized. And so you would do an evaluation, and you would then do the mobilizations, the manipulations, the dry needling, the soft tissue work on the person on the table. And this is the ass backwards part, is what did we do after that? We sent them to like a high school tech to do the movement stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I just got to the point where I was like, why is nobody getting better? Like, they're feeling better on the table, but then it's like this, it's reoccurring. They're still coming back, nothing's changing. Nothing's changing permanently anyway. And that's where I first had the realization. I'm like, that's the missing link. And I knew that all the time. But then when you try to advocate for yourself in that type of an environment, you're never going to go anywhere, right? Because your role,
dollars and cents.
Yes, and you're justifying to insurance companies, and it's a whole thing. And so eventually what ended up happening there is I went rogue. I had no game plan. I just had an idea. I was like, I know that I can't do this, so I'm gonna go just throw a table in the back of a CrossFit gym and see what happens. Because I knew that I can do better giving the athletes or giving my clients, my patients at that time more time,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one time. And I saw something that was different there. And I opened up that door to be able to really to solve the one problem, which was the time component. Now I had the requisite time to be able to work with the athletes. Now I can actually develop the connection with them in a really, because how much can you develop with them? And 4 people an hour, maybe we got 15, 20 minutes with them at most. There's no way you can establish a
Surface
connection.
level.
It's all surface level stuff. And like, so tell me about your day. Like, how's it going? What's your pain level? All right, let's get to work. There's no learning about the athlete. And so that allowed me to be able to have the time with them. And listen, my to this day, my evaluations are an hour and a half to 2 hours long because the majority of that it's spent talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to watch you move, and then we're going to evaluate, and then we're going to put the game plan together. But it's all coming back to establishing that level of connection first. That's the most important.
Which then allows for the release for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what's binding and potentially causing the pain.
It's all pent up energy. It's all energy. And a lot of times it is coming down to how they're experiencing it in every other aspect of their life. And it's usually not about the nuts and bolts of the injury itself.
No. And brings us back to the nervous system and biopsychosocial.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It really is.
Well, dude, I appreciate you. And one of the best follows out there on social, because you're all over the world, helping people. Where can our listeners continue to follow your growth and journey as a practitioner and self-leader in this world?
Well, I am all over the Instagrams. So you can follow me at Rooted in Movement. It's ROOTEDIN, and then the acronym, which I thought I was really clever with, movement, MVMNT, no vowels, stands for Movement, Vitality, Mindset, Nutrition, and Training. Try to be holistic, try to be very, very comprehensive in the way that I look at things, and so then I throw that into the brand. But Instagram is where you're going to see all my travels. I post a lot of different videos on there, movements and circuits, and how you can rehab through different painful experiences in the body. And then if you want to get in contact with me, Matthew at rootedinmovement.com. Happy to answer any questions there too. Or slide into the DMs. Very
Easy there. All right. Well, welcome back to Drip,
Yes.
man. I appreciate you coming out here. And
always a pleasure, man.
yeah, I need neck.
We can get you going for old time's sake.
For old time's
Old
sake.
tune-up.
Old tune-up
Yep.
once every couple of years. Contact sports, baby. You feel it forever. All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Bye.
Take care. Awesome.